It's recording.
Cool.
Richard Grannon, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me, Mr. Piero. It's always good talking to you.
So we're both in the sun today, getting our full of vitamin D.
Yep,
and
keeping it healthy.
I've been following your channel, and I encourage everyone to do so on both of your channels, which you can find on YouTube, but also your discussions. I think it's called Tentacle Croissant with your friend in Prague. Very interesting and very funny discussions as well. Richard, in what kind of mess we are now, 18 months, more than 18 months into this crisis?
I would think the mess is becoming it's becoming beyond financial, beyond political, beyond ideological, and now it's getting personal. Now it's becoming an emotional and psychological issue, just because this level of alienation and isolation is psychosis inducing. If it doesn't end soon, and I mean, we might have maybe till the spring, and I don't even know if we have that. The winter may break us. I don't know, because I don't know how bad this winter is going to be, but I know it's going to be bad in terms of just flu deaths now, because the weak, not to sound cruel, but some people are in a weaker state in terms of their immune system. They're going to die in unforeseen numbers now of flu viruses, as they do every year, but usually they would be it would be spaced out over a 2-year period. Now all that death is going to come in one. So we're going to have a very bad winter. We're still going to be dealing with restrictions. We're still not going to have our freedoms. We're still isolated and alienated. We're getting addicted and conditioned to the isolation and alienation. Psychosis is in our future. Psychosis may even be in our present, mate. We may already be going mad collectively as a culture.
I agree. Now, whether all this crisis was planned, and I don't think so, or it was used opportunistically and managed in very unprofessional and clumsy way. After 18 months, however, we start to see some patterns. The patterns of management, they are clearly organized. And since I don't know who is they who are managing this, I wonder, and perhaps you have some clues on that, is what is the psychological profile of the people who are organizing this now?
To the extent that there is organization, I agree with you. In the beginning, I saw a much broader conspiracy. And now with the sheer levels of clear incompetence and wastage, I mean, if this was a Nazi or a Stalinist takeover, it would be the worst one in human history. So maybe it is a failed coup, a failed attempt, and now it's fractured and it's broken down into different groups and subgroups and different agendas running. But anybody who has any intentionality in terms of exploiting this crisis is a pure psychopath with no compassion whatsoever for the enormous human suffering that this is creating. For you and I, who are, we're somewhat financially independent, we've been living outside of the mainstream culture for, I think you just cited 15 years. I'd say for me, it's a good 10, where I was just traveling and moving. Listen, it's not that big of a deal for us or for people like us. If you're middle class and up, it's not that bad. But the majority of people are not middle class and up. They're not financially independent, and they are plugged in. It's torture. It's torture. It's brutal torture. And the people who do this with any kind of intentionality we would have to rewrite our definition of callous, our definition of sadism, our definition of cruelty to encompass the sheer level of intentional human suffering here, which I would say is there's no precedent for this in human history. People will find that offensive. They'll cite the Holocaust. They'll cite the Stalinist efforts to, clean the whatever he called it, the purges. They'll cite Cambodia and everything. But what I would say is there was a naivety there. These people somewhat believed in something. They had a utopian idea. There's a kind of psychosis that people fall into where they're like, yes, we must steep ourselves in blood, but history will absolve us. And the perfect utopia is just over that hill, comrades. just kill a few more families, a few more children, and we'll make it. These people don't believe that. There's no utopianism here. There's no naivety here at all. So it's pure evil, purest evil.
I agree. When you read the book, that the manuals that have been written for these people, for these elites, whoever they are, and there are factions, and it's not all of them are not tugging the rope at the same time in the same direction. You can see the differences between, I don't know, Russia, Australia, or France, for example. Completely different ways to manage this thing. More or less brutal, more or less free. The scary part is that we don't see any way out, because a lot of these people, for sure, they seem to double down at every step. And there's less death. Let's go with cases. There's going to be less cases. Let's blame it on non-vaccinated. There's going to be more flu deaths this year. Let's blame it on a fifth wave or a sixth wave or whatever. There's never going to be enough. It's like some mad dictator who will never accept defeat, and we start to blame his own troops. And you've seen movies about the Third Reich at the last few months of the war. And my grandfather was in a camp at the time. They were giving orders to be even more cruel and more cruel and more cruel, so much as they were losing the war. How do we stop this process of self-destruction in the end?
I'm not an economist. I'm not a politician. I only really can understand it through the lens of what I know, which is some psychology and some philosophy. And that there is no, well, let me be brutally pessimistic. There is no collective solution here. What's going to happen is going to happen. We are in a state of inertia now that this wave cannot be stopped. We are going to arrive at a destination, and it's not going to be pretty. For the individuals, the few, and I mean a tiny, 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 and totally insignificant minority, they can do as much as they can to unplug. Just unplug from the narrative, unplug from the lie. Don't be bullied into telling lies like everybody else is. This is really a weird moment in human history, where it's become as stripped down as truth versus falsehood. Will you tell the truth or will you lie? This is the apocalyptic moment of the day of judgment. Will you lie or will you tell the truth? And it won't be everybody who passes that test. It just can't be. At this point, it just cannot be. So I don't have a solution. I think this problem is too large. But for certain individuals, or if people want to gather together into their own clans, but you must leave the culture. There's no solution from within the culture. You cannot stay within and form a new political party and have a revolution and make everything okay. No. Not now. The system has outgrown itself. I wouldn't even say that collapse is inevitable. Collapse is occurring. It's not in our future. The first signs of structural collapse are already here. They've been. We're going through them. The tower is crumbling.
You've read my book, right? My first book.
Yeah.
Survive the Economic Collapse, and it's over 15 years. I think that around 2020 we would start the process of inevitable, unavoidable, extremely brutal collapse.
Yeah.
Now, I sometimes wake up in the morning and I go through, oh shit, what I've been planning for all this time is actually here. Yeah. And sometimes once upon one of those mornings, I actually get a bit scared. I say, shit, this is going to be exactly as I planned.
Yeah.
Now, for those who are not planned this so far ahead, who might discover this, they must be super scared. They must be afraid, more than anxious, terrorized.
Yes.
How can we tell them? Because we can't tell them it's going to be all right. It's not. How can we tell them to manage that fear and to make it psychologically bearable, and to give them hope that, or perhaps despair? I saw one of your videos where you say that despair perhaps is better than hope. Yes. To go ahead and to actually push them to act. And if act to what?
So in traditional psychology, where it bleeds over into life coaching, you would say, here's 15 steps that manage the fear and reduce the fear and all the rest of it. I say, no, listen to the fear. Listen to it. It's right. The fear is right. This is not a neurotic fear. This is not a phobic response. The threat is real. The collapse is imminent. Despair, and then grieve. The shift that I would offer people that would be useful would be philosophical to the point of being religious. You must have a different perspective of life. And remember this, it's always been the apocalypse. It's always been awful. Everything is always the apocalypse somewhere on earth. So when you read the book of Revelation or whatever apocalyptic text, where that individual is seeing into a future, they're seeing into a future that's individualized and localized. And I mean, what would it have been like in Iraq, in the early 2000s? What would it have been like in Rwanda? That would appear to every individual localized point of human consciousness as the apocalypse. Were they wrong? No, that's as apocalyptic as it gets. People are being hacked to death in front of you, your family, your friends, your children, on the basis of what? On the basis of some vague notion of ethnicity. Bosnia, 1993. What would that have appeared like in Sarajevo? What would that have appeared like at Srebrenica? The apocalypse. It's always awful. And we've always survived. We've always managed. We've always pulled through it. Because the truth is, we're extremely tough as a species. We're extremely tough as individuals. But we're brainwashed now to think that we're weak, to think that we can't cope. So our fear is, I fucking won't be able to cope. I'm not going to be able to cope with this. It's going to be horrendous. Yeah, it's going to be bad. But you always did. Every iteration of your ancestor did cope with it. How do I know? Because you're here. You're here. You have their eyes, their ears, their nose, their hands. They don't belong to you. They don't belong to me. They belong to the people who came before me. They all survived. It's always been awful. To a degree, it will always be the apocalypse. And we will survive this. That's how I would frame it for people if they wanted to feel a little bit better.
For sure. I hope I can give people some tools and some tricks, but definitely the attitude has to be almost to transform that fear into I don't give a shit. Yeah. In my next book, I'll have a chapter on how not to give. And there's been a famous book, which is not on this context, but was written a few years ago called How to Not Give a Fuck. Yes. And it was an interesting book with some great ideas on how, if you're a Stoic, and I pretend to be one, but at the same time, I'm an Epicurean, and you combine both to say, I enjoy life. I will find a way to enjoy life. And if we can survive 6 months without going out, without going to a restaurant if needed, or a year, or 10 years. Our grandparents would never go to the restaurant because they couldn't afford it. Yeah. So we can stay with friends, with families, with and so it means that you need to build that. You need to build your network of friends, your families, and the relationship that makes you stick. Yes. Now, in truth, we don't have a lot of time because we should have started this 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago. But at least starting today is better than starting tomorrow, no?
Sure. And I think that needs to be the attitude is we'll make do because we always did. It's not like when we were, Neanderthals, everything was prepared and we knew where the predators were. We didn't have drones. We didn't have sat-nav. We just fucking well made do and we got through it. If our perception of ourselves is tough and strong, the fear will go down. If you, there's a book called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway, which is a good book. People should read it. If you have the attitude, and she says this, the author of the book, she tells people to say this, whatever happens in the moment when it comes up, I'll deal with it. Whatever happens, I'll deal with it. And look, you either will or you won't. And if you don't, you're dead. So don't worry about it. You'll just be dead. So you either cope and you survive, well done, you keep going in this hellish realm that we're in, or you don't and you're dead and it's game over. It's a bit bleak to modern ears, but that's only because we've been so spoiled. We've been so lucky for so long, and we imagine that this is the reality. No, it isn't. This is a freak. This is a freak occurrence. We've lived inside of almost not random, but let's say contingent, spontaneously occurring wave. And we've existed in the peace between two waves. And we think, oh, this is life. Life is McDonald's. Life is restaurants. Life is cinemas. Life is... No, it fucking isn't. Holidays. Flying around the world to go and eat food from another country from cooked by a poor person. No, it isn't. That's not life. Maybe for kings and queens, but they enjoyed a fraction of a percentage of what we can enjoy in terms of physical indulgence today. It's a freak occurrence of unprecedented affluence, and quite frankly, it's made us mentally ill. We need less of it anyway. And I think there just has to be a kind of acceptance that this is not the end of something wonderful. It's a return back to normality. That's what we're facing.
Okay, so people should live, embrace that fear, and try to find their survival instincts. I kind of keep my hope that every single politician of the last 40 years will go the same fate as Gaddafi, just because. But in my day-to-day business, in my day-to-day work, you can have dreams. In my day-to-day business, psychologically, okay, you don't want to give these 15 rules on what to do because they probably don't exist. But give us some simple exercise to work on our psychology, to work on our routines or our ways of thinking, so that we don't become, fearful of the fear and also act stupid, which is usually a problem in survival situations.
For sure. I would say journaling is always helpful because it improves the quality of your thinking. So you can ask these kinds of questions and journal them out. I would say it sounds trite, but it actually is really going to help with a person's psychological resilience, is become grateful again, become appreciative for what you do have. So if every day you're journaling and you're writing down 3, 4, 5 things that you're really grateful for, that you really appreciate, like your health, like your family, like the stars, like the breeze in the trees, the most wonderful things in life, the things that raise your consciousness and raise your reverence for life, they'll all survive. They've always been there. They'll always be there. The sound of the waves crashing on the shore was there for millions and millions of years before we showed up, and it'll be there exactly the same sound for millions and millions of years after we've gone. So appreciation, gratitude, focus on the things that lead you towards a sense of reverence for life, and start thinking in broader terms. Think about time, think about infinity, think about mortality, how short our lives are, what silly, posturing, desperate little scurrying creatures we are, trying to build things and stand on each other's shoulders and poop on each other's heads and fuck each other and eat as much as we can, fuck as much as we can. We're hysterical little animals. So these are perspectives that will help people to find some serenity, because the serenity won't come from out there. Nothing is going to come from out there now that is of any major usage. It will come from within. But we must give up. You must despair. You must give up. Let go of this culture. Let go of all of the externals, because if you cling to them and they're torn away from you, it'll pull your arms and legs off. But if you've already let go of them and they're torn away from you, it has no impact on you at all. So seek therefore, I would say, for some kind of serenity. If you are a religious person or you have any religious predilections whatsoever, focus on them. Focus on them. Focus on infinity. Focus on God. Focus on what it is to be a human and what might happen to us after we die. That will give you the resilience you'll need to deal with the times that we're about to go through.
Have you been reading my new book, my book that is not yet out, that I write right now?
Psychically,
yeah,
I'm stealing your ideas.
Oh, but I think you're correct. We get to the same. This is, by the way, some questions that philosophers since Plato, at least, have been asking themselves. How to die, how to live, how to be virtuous, how to not, be whining. I'm moving from Plato to Nietzsche in one sentence.
Yes,
but
that was quite a jump, but yes.
Or you seem to really like Dostoevsky recently, and I agree.
Yes.
He's one of the best authors ever.
Yeah.
And these questions have been going around, which goes to what you just said.
Yeah.
This is on a different magnitude, but the problem, because we're so many more, we are 8 billion. But when we were 1 billion at the time of Dostoevsky, 1.5 billion perhaps, fundamentally humans are the same, and the dynamics in society, within people, family, despair, psychopathy are with us since the dawn of humanity, or humanity, we have to say this day. But where can people learn more about you? Because I think your content is exceptional. Where can people find your thoughts and your ideas more?
That's very kind of you. I appreciate you saying that, mate. I'm there on YouTube. Probably the most of my material. I have a channel that's just called Richard Grannon. That's a psychology channel, and then I have a channel called Richard Grannon Philosophy, which is more where I attempt to share because I'm not a philosopher. I have no degree in philosophy, so I'm learning as I go. And as I'm learning as I go, I share what I've learned. So you're getting naive interpretations of philosophy that's very well trod. But I think it's useful to hear somebody's naive perspective, because if you hear the experienced perspective, it has a kind of cynicism baked into it. So I get things wrong, of course, and I misinterpret what I'm hearing, but those misinterpretations could be useful to people, so they can find that stuff on the philosophy channel.
I wonder if Aristotle or Marcus Aurelius had a degree in philosophy. I don't think so.
I'm sure that they didn't.
So degree is not fundamental. What is important is the quality of the thought. Well, Richard Grannon, thank you very much. We should talk again soon. And in the meantime, enjoy your time in Geneva, as I will here in Geneva, in Ibiza, and me in Geneva. And let's connect. All the people who watch us, try to connect with people of quality, with people where you can have debate, where you can share opinions, disagree, agree. It's important to keep us intellectually alive and not stuck into either conspiracy theories that become worse and worse and make you even less powerless, because even more powerless. Sometimes you have this crazy, they want to kill all of the people. Yeah, but that takes away all your agency.
Yeah.
And makes you. I hate these things. Even if they may be true, I hate them, because it takes away your capacity to act. And at the same time, don't think, everything's going to be all right, because it won't. You have to move. You have to act. You have to do things.
Yes, 100%. 100%.
Take care.
Thank you very much, sir. Speak to you soon.